Welcome to the second video of this course, Creating Your First Project. In the first video we installed Django. In this video we'll see how to run the development server and also take a look at project settings. Then we will deal with projects and applications. We'll also create an application in the end. Our first Django project will be a complete blog site. Django provides a command that allows you to easily create an initial project file structure. Now let's run a command from your shell to create the project. This will create a Django project with the name MySite, as shown. Let's take a look at the generated project structure. You can open the directory MySite in Windows. Open the MySite directory and you'll see these files. Let's see what these files are. Manage.py, a command line utility to interact with your project. It's a thin wrapper around the Django-admin.py tool. You don't need to edit this file. MySite. Your project directory consists of the files which are init.py, an empty file that tells Python to treat the MySite directory as a Python module. Settings.py, settings and configuration for your project, contains initial default settings. URLs.py, the place where your URL patterns live. Each URL defined here is mapped to a view. WSGI.py, configuration to run your project as a WSGI application. The generated settings.py file includes a basic configuration to use an SQLite database and a list of Django applications that are added to your project by default. We need to create the tables in the database for the initial applications. Now open your command prompt and change the directory to MySite using this command. After that, run this command. You'll see an output that ends like this. Here, the tables for the initial applications have been created in the database. You'll learn about the migrate management command in later videos. Now let's run the development server. Django comes with a lightweight web server to run your code quickly without needing to spend time configuring a production server. When you run the Django development server, it keeps checking for changes in your code. It reloads automatically, freeing you from manually reloading it after code changes. However, it might not notice some actions like adding new files to your project, so you'll have to restart the server manually in these cases. Start the development server by typing the command python manage.py run server, as shown on screen, from your project's root folder. You should see the output like this on your screen. Now open this URL in your browser. You should see a page telling you the project is successfully running as shown on the screen. You can indicate Django to run the development server on a custom host and port, or tell it you want to run your project loading a different settings file. For example, you can run the manage.py command as shown. Now go to your browser and run this. It works. This comes in handy to deal with multiple environments that require different settings. Remember, this server is only intended for development and is not suitable for production use. In order to deploy Django in a production environment, you should run it as a Web Server Gateway Interface (WSGI) application using a real web server, such as Apache, GUnicorn, or UWSGI. You can find out more information about how to deploy Django with different web servers at this link. Now we'll check some project settings. Let's open the settings.py file and take a look at the configuration of our project. There are several settings that Django includes in this file, but these are only a part of all the Django settings available. You can see all the settings and their default values at this link. Let's take a look at a few settings. 1. Debug is a boolean that turns on/off the debug mode of the project. If set to true, Django will display detailed error pages when an uncaught exception is thrown by your application. When you move to a production environment, remember you have to set it to false. Never deploy a site into production with debug turned on, because you'll expose sensitive data of your project. 2. Allowed hosts is not applied while debug mode is on or when running tests. Once you're going to move your site to production and set debug to false, you will have to add your domain/host to this setting in order to allow it to serve the Django site. 3. Installed apps is a setting you'll have to edit in all projects. This setting tells Django which applications are active for this site. By default, Django includes some applications which are Django.contrib.admin. This is an administration site. Django.contrib.auth. This is an authentication framework. Django.contrib.contenttypes. This is a framework for N content types. Django.contrib.sessions. This is a session framework. Django.contrib.messages. This is a messaging framework. Django.contrib.static files. This is a framework for managing static files. Middleware classes is a tuple containing middlewares to be executed. Root URL conf indicates the Python module where the root URL patterns of your application are defined. Databases is a dictionary containing the settings for all the databases to be used in the project. There must always be a default database. The default configuration uses an SQLite 3 database. Language code defines the default language code for this Django site. Don't worry if you don't understand much about what you're seeing. You'll get more familiar with Django settings in later sections. We'll now take a look at projects and applications. Throughout this course, you'll read the terms project and application over and over. In Django, a project is considered a Django installation with some settings, and an application is a group of models, views and templates, and URLs. Applications interact with the framework to provide some specific functionalities and may be reused in various projects. You can think of the project as your website, which contains several applications like blog, wiki or forum, which can be used in other projects. We'll now look at creating an application. Now let's create your first Django application. We'll create a blog application from scratch. From your project's root directory, run the command in command prompt python manage.py startapp blog. This will create the basic structure of the application, which looks like this. In the blog directory, you'll find these files. In this migrations, you'll find the init files. Let's look at these files. Admin.py. This is where you register models to include them into the Django administration site. Using the Django admin site is optional. Migrations. This directory will contain database migrations of your application. Migrations allow Django to track your model changes and synchronize the database accordingly. Models.py. Data models of your application. All Django applications need to have a models.py file, but this file can be left empty. Tests.py. This is where you can add tests for your application. Views.py. The logic of your application goes here. Each view receives an HTTP request, processes it, and returns a response. In this video, we saw how to create the project. In our next video, we'll design the blog data schema.